All right, here we're in Chapter 0, Arithmetic Review. This is section 0.1 on integers. So what are integers? Well, they're all positive whole numbers, so 0 and their opposites. Okay, so we have all those, basically our counting numbers were going to be our whole numbers. We have zeros and all the negatives whole numbers. Okay, so that's going to be our thing. So it might go, from dot 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 -7, -6, -5, -4, -3, -2, -1, 0, and then going up from there, and so on. Okay, and so those are going to be our integers. Now, if we want to add integers, and now notice we have both the positives and the negatives, so it's going to be different than just adding, 1 plus 3 to get 4. It's going to be different than that because we have some negatives involved. So we have some different things to think about. So if we have the signs matching, whether they're positives or negatives, we basically add the two numbers together and keep the sign, whether it's positive or negative. So in this case, we have 8 plus 3. Both of those have a positive on them. So we can take 8 plus 3 and we get 11. Now the sign was positive, and so that would be our solution. Now here we have a -9 plus a -7. So what it told us to do is just add the two numbers together. So we're going to add 9 to 7. So that's going to be 16. And then we take the sign of both of them. That was negative. And so that would be our solution. Okay. And so the key thing is they have to have the same sign. So the signs have to match. What if the signs don't match though? Well, one is going to be either positive and one's going to be negative. One can be larger, one can be smaller. And so it really doesn't matter. What we do is we take and subtract the smaller number, whether it's positive or negative, we don't care, from the larger number. And then we keep the sign of the larger number for the answer. Okay. So here we have a -8 plus 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually take 8 minus 2 and we get 6, and now we use the sign of the larger. Well, the larger is negative, so our answer is a -6. Now in this case, what we're doing is we're just taking 14, not 16, 14 minus the 6. And so when we do that, when we take 14 minus 6, we get 8. Now the sign of the larger was positive, so that means our solution is a positive 8. Now here we have a 9 and a -5. So we take the larger 9 minus the smaller 5. We get 4. The larger one was positive, and so our answer is just a 4. Now here again, we have the larger being negative, so we're just going to take 11 minus our 8. Well, that's going to give us 3, but our answer is going to be the sign of the larger, which is the negative, so it's going to be a -3. Okay, so that's what we do when we're adding two integers together, whether they're both positive or both negative, or one's positive and one's negative. All right, what about subtractions of negatives? So what we do is we're going to convert the problem to addition, and then we're going to use the methods we discussed earlier, just adding the opposite basically. Okay, so what we're going to do here, we have 8 minus 3. So we're going to convert that to 8 plus a -3. Okay, because what we want to do is we want to drop the subtract and make it add, and so we have to add the opposite. Now we have a positive and we have a negative, so we're going to take 8 minus 3, which is going to give us 5. Now the larger is positive, so our answer is a positive 5. Now this one, it's pretty easy. We could just take 8 minus 3 and we get 5 directly, but they want you to notice that if we do this, we can do it through addition, change it to addition of the opposite, and then we get our 5 as well. Now, what about this one? Sometimes this is where it gets confusing when we have all these different things like this. So what we're going to do is we'll have a -4, we're going to change it to plus, and then we have our -7. Okay, so we have -4 plus a -7. So now we have the same signs, are both negative. So 7 plus 4 is 11. And our sign was the same on both of them, and so it's a -11. Now here we have 9 minus a -5, basically. Now, when we have this minus a minus, what happens there is that becomes a plus because minus a minus equals a plus. And so what we really have here is 9 plus 5. Okay. Well, 9 plus 5, we can do that pretty easy. That's just going to give us 14. And we're adding same signs, and so it's positive. Now here again, we have this minus a minus. So what we're going to have is we're going to rewrite this as minus 6 or negative 6, then plus 4. Now we have a larger and a smaller. One's negative, one's positive. So we'll take the larger minus the smaller. We get 2. Now we take the sign of the larger, which is negative 2 for our answer. Okay. Now what about multiplication or division? Okay, well, we're just going to multiply and divide as normal, and then we worry about the sign kind of at the end. So if we have two like signs, either, a plus times a plus or a negative times a negative, we're going to get a positive answer. Okay, so that's the key. When they're both the same, they're going to be giving us positive. Same thing happens if we take a plus divided by a plus or a negative divided by a negative, we get that positive answer as well. Okay, so as long as you have two of the same signs, you're going to get a positive answer. Now, if we have unlike signs, a plus times a negative or a plus, or this is supposed to be a negative times a positive. It's not supposed to be that way, but that's okay. That's going to give us a negative answer. Okay. So that happens when we have unlike signs. One's positive, one's negative. And that's the same thing here. We have a positive divided by a negative or a negative divided by a positive. One of the negative signs only, that's going to give us a negative. Now, if we kind of take that out a little bit more, we have more than one thing. Maybe we're taking a plus times a negative times a negative times a negative, or here we're taking, negative times a negative times a negative times a negative. So, we're having more than just those two. If we have multiple negative signs, that's going to depend on if we have an odd or even number for our final answer being positive or negative. So if we have an odd number of negatives, such as here we have 1, 2, 3, that's going to give us a negative answer. Okay, so this is going to be a negative. But if we have an even number of negatives, such as this one, that's going to give us a positive answer. And that kind of can be broken down because two negatives make a positive, these two negatives make a positive, and a positive make it a positive. Well, here we have, well, these two negatives make a positive, and we're left over with a negative, so we have a positive, and a negative, and that gives us our negative. Okay, so let's pause there and we'll come back with more.